Admiral Vexfer stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon, and watched the yellow star grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, 200 ships of the 4th Expeditionary Fleet moved through space like deadly shadows. Each ship was a weapon of war, built to destroy planets and break entire civilizations. The Admiral's scaled hands gripped the command rail. His red eyes studied the data flowing across multiple screens. This was supposed to be easy work. Intelligence reports said the humans of Earth were weak. They had barely learned to travel between stars. Their technology was primitive. Their military was small. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Veltar from his station, "we are now at the edge of their solar system. The planet they call Earth is the third one from their star." Vexfer nodded slowly. In his 300 years of military service, he had conquered 47 worlds. Most surrendered after seeing his fleet. The few that fought back were destroyed within hours. This mission would be no different. Any response from the planet? He asked. "Nothing yet, sir. We have not announced our presence." The Admiral smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Let them see us first. Fear is a useful weapon." On Earth, alarms were ringing in the headquarters of the Terran Defense Council. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, hundreds of people worked at computer stations. The main screen showed what their long-range sensors had detected. It was the largest alien fleet ever seen approaching their solar system. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the center of the command room. She was 55 years old, with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. She watched the enemy. Ships on the screen and felt no fear. She had been preparing for this day for 20 years. "How many ships?" she asked her intelligence officer. 200 confirmed, Admiral. All large vessels. The biggest fleet the Draconian hegemony has ever sent to a single world. "And they think we only have 30 ships, Chun said quietly. "Yes, ma'am. Our deep space monitoring posts show they expect this to be easy." Chun almost smiled. "Let them think that." Humanity had learned long ago that being underestimated was often an advantage. "Send a message to all defense stations," she ordered. Operation Deception begins now. I want every ship we're supposed to have visible on their sensors. Make sure they see exactly what they expect to see. Across the solar system, hidden bases received her orders. Ships that had been hiding behind asteroids and moons began to move. But only 30 ships appeared on sensors that the Draconians could detect. The rest remained invisible, waiting on the Crimson Talon. Sensor operator Crickstall looked up from his station. "Admiral, I'm detecting their fleet, 30 ships total. All are much smaller than our vessels." Vexfer laughed. 30 ships? This is supposed to be their entire defense force? "It appears so, sir. They seem to be organizing near their 4th planet, the one they call Mars." "Pathetic," the Admiral said. "Open a channel to the human planet. It is time to offer them the choice of surrender or death." The communication beam traveled across space and reached Earth. In the Defense Council bunker, Admiral Chun received the call. She looked at the face of the Draconian Admiral on her screen. He was exactly what she expected. Proud, confident, and completely unprepared for what humanity had planned. "I am Admiral Vexfer of the Draconian 4th Expeditionary Fleet," the alien said. His voice was deep and threatening. "You will surrender your world immediately. Your ships will power down their weapons. Your leaders will come aboard my flagship to sign the surrender documents. You have 1 hour to comply." Hyun studied his face for a moment. She had read every file on Draconian military tactics. She knew how they thought, how they fought, how they expected their enemies to behave. That knowledge would be their downfall. "Admiral Vexfer," she said calmly. "I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. I have considered your offer." "Carefully, and," Vexfer demanded, "we decline." The alien's eyes widened in surprise. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever simply refused his surrender demand. They either surrendered immediately or demanded impossible terms. But never had anyone just said no. "You refuse?" He said slowly. "Do you not understand what you face?" My fleet can destroy your entire world. Your 30 ships cannot stop us. Perhaps not, Chun replied, but we're going to try anyway. Earth does not surrender to anyone. She cut the communication. On the Draconian flagship, Dexver stared at the blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked confused. This was not how conquests were supposed to begin. Sir, asked his first officer Zekran, what are your orders? Dexver was silent for a long moment. He had expected fear, pleading, or desperate negotiations. Instead, he had received quiet defiance. It was disturbing. Prepare the fleet for combat, he finally ordered. If they want to die fighting, we will grant their wish. All ships will advance on their positions near Mars. We will destroy their fleet first, then bombard their planet until they surrender. On Earth, Admiral Chun watched as the Draconian fleet began to move. 200 massive ships started their approach through the solar system. On paper, it was hopeless. The Draconians had more ships, bigger weapons, and shields that could stop most known weapons. But Chen knew something the Draconians did not. Humanity had not been idle during the past century of space travel. They had studied every alien ship that passed through their system. They had captured Draconian technology from abandoned vessels. Most importantly, they had learned to think differently than any other species in the galaxy. Signal all hidden units, she ordered. Enemy fleet is approaching. Begin Phase 1 preparations. And remember, we only get one chance at this. Throughout the solar system, responses came back. From asteroid mining stations that were really weapons platforms, from research ships that were actually stealth destroyers, from the moon bases that contained the largest guns ever built by human hands, the Draconian fleet continued its advance, confident and powerful. Admiral Dexver stood on his bridge, planning the destruction of humanity. He had conquered 47 worlds. Earth would be number 40-8, but as his ships moved deeper into the solar system, they passed by thousands of pieces of space. Debris, old satellites, spent rocket stages, broken asteroids. The Draconians paid no attention to the junk. Why should they? It was just garbage floating in space. They did not know that much of that debris was not debris at all. Hidden among the real junk were sensors, weapons, and devices that no other species had ever imagined. Humanity's greatest strength was not their ships or their guns. It was their ability to see possibilities that others missed. The trap was set, the prey was coming. And for the first time in galactic history, a Draconian fleet was about to learn what it meant to underestimate the human race. Admiral Chun watched the enemy fleet approach and allowed herself a small smile. The Draconians thought they were hunting. Soon they would learn they had become the hunted. The war for Earth was about to begin, but it would not be the war that Admiral Dexver expected. The Draconian fleet moved through space like a metal storm. Admiral Dexver watched his ships advance toward the human positions near Mars. His tactical screen showed the enemy fleet clearly. 30 small ships arranged in what looked like a desperate defensive formation. How long until we reach firing range? He asked his weapons officer. 18 minutes, sir. The humans appear to be retreating toward their planet Mars. Dexver nodded. As expected, they realized they cannot win. Perhaps they hoped to use the planet as cover. But the Admiral was wrong. The human ships were not retreating in fear. They were moving according to a plan that had been practiced hundreds of times. Admiral Chun had studied every battle the Draconians had ever fought. She knew exactly how they would approach, exactly where they would expect the human ships to be. Signal the Jupiter stations, Chun ordered from her command bunker on Earth. Begin Operation Pebble Storm. Near Jupiter, what looked like normal asteroid mining stations suddenly came alive. But these were not mining stations at all. They were the most powerful magnetic launchers ever built by human hands. For months, they had been gathering asteroids and space debris. Now they put that collection to use. The first wave of projectiles left Jupiter's orbit at incredible speed. Thousands of rocks, metal chunks, and ice blocks accelerated to nearly 10% of light speed. They were too small for the Draconian sensors to detect individually, but together they formed a deadly cloud racing toward the alien fleet on the Crimson Talon. Sensor operator Crystal noticed something strange. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual readings from the Jupiter area." "What kind of readings?" the expert asked. "Multiple small objects moving at high velocity. They appear to be ... rocks?" The Admiral looked confused. "Rocks? Are you certain your equipment is working properly?" "Yes, sir, but the readings don't make sense." "Natural asteroids don't move this fast," the expert dismissed the report. "Probably just sensor echoes from their primitive technology. Focus on the real threat." But the rocks were very real. The first impacts came without warning. Draconian shields were designed to stop energy weapons and large missiles. They were not built to handle thousands of small objects moving at massive speeds. The projectiles punched through the energy barriers like bullets through paper. The Draconian heavy cruiser Bloodwind was the first ship hit. Hundreds of high-speed rocks smashed into its hull. The impacts created massive holes in the armor. Secondary explosions ripped through the ship as the debris destroyed critical systems. "What's happening?" the expert shouted as alarms rang across his bridge. "We're under attack, sir." "Multiple impacts across the fleet. The rocks ... weapons." More ships suffered damage as the asteroid storm continued. The Draconians had never seen anything like it. Who used rocks as weapons? It was impossible to defend against because there were so many projectiles coming from so many directions. "Return fire," the expert ordered. "Destroy whatever is launching those objects." The Draconian fleet turned their massive guns toward Jupiter. Energy beams lanced across space, striking the asteroid belt around the giant planet. Explosions lit up the darkness as mining stations were destroyed. But the damage was already done. 12 Draconian ships were heavily damaged, and 3 were completely destroyed. Admiral Chun watched the results from Earth and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The first surprise had worked perfectly, but she knew the Draconians would adapt quickly. They always did. "Phase 2, she ordered. "Begin the dance." The 30 visible human ships suddenly scattered in all directions. They moved with impossible speed and agility. Draconian vessels were large and powerful, but they were also slow to turn. The human ships darted between them like angry wasps around a bear, but these were not random movements. Every human captain knew exactly where to go. They had practiced this maneuver using detailed maps of Draconian fleet formations. The aliens always arranged their ships the same way. That predictability was now their weakness. The human ship Denver flashed past the Draconian destroyer Clawstrike. As it passed, it dropped a small device that attached itself to the alien hull. The device looked harmless. It was no bigger than a briefcase. The Draconians didn't even notice it. The same thing happened across the battlefield. Human ships made quick passes, dropping their small packages on enemy vessels. The Draconians fired their weapons, but the human ships were too fast and too unpredictable to hit. "What are they doing?" the expert demanded. "Why are they not fighting properly?" His tactical officer studied the displays. "They appear to be running, sir." "But their movements don't make tactical sense." "Then destroy them, all ships. Concentrate fire on the nearest human vessel." The Draconian fleet focused their weapons on the human destroyer Phoenix. Dozens of energy beams converged on the small ship, but instead of trying to dodge, the Phoenix did something unexpected. It flew directly into the center of the Draconian formation. The alien gunners hesitated. If they kept firing, they might hit their own ships. In that moment of confusion, the Phoenix released its cargo. Hundreds of small drones poured out of the human ship like a swarm of metal insects. These were not ordinary drones. Human engineers had studied captured Draconian technology for decades. They knew exactly how the alien ships worked, where their weak points were, and how to exploit them. The drones spread out across the enemy formation, each one seeking a specific target. The first drone reached the Draconian cruiser, Iron Fang. It attached itself to the ship's communication array and began transmitting a signal. Within seconds, Every computer on the ship started playing human music at maximum volume. The crew tried to shut it off, but the signal was too deeply embedded in their systems. Other drones found their targets. Some attached to engine exhausts and began broadcasting false navigation data. Others found weapon systems and started creating feedback loops that made the guns aim at random targets. A few clever drones even found the ship's food processors and began making them produce meals that tasted terrible. The Draconian fleet fell into chaos. Ships crashed into each other as their navigation systems failed. Weapons fired wildly in all directions. Crew members abandoned their posts to escape the deafening human music that played from every speaker. "What is this madness?" Vexver screamed. Over the noise of human rock music that had somehow taken over his own ship's communication system, his first officer was trying to shut down the music with no success. "Sir, our computer systems have been compromised. The humans have infected us with some kind of virus, but it wasn't a virus. It was something much worse from the Draconian perspective. It was human creativity applied to warfare. No other species in the galaxy fought like this. Most aliens saw war as a formal process with rules and proper procedures. Humans saw war as a problem to be solved using any method that worked. The small packages that the human ships had dropped were now activating. Each one contained a different surprise. Some released clouds of metallic dust that interfered with sensors. Others projected holographic images that made single ships look like entire fleets. A few contained speakers that broadcast fake emergency signals in perfect Draconian language. Admiral Vexver realized that his perfectly organized fleet was falling apart. His ships were confused, damaged, and scattered. Worse, he was beginning to understand that the humans were not fighting randomly. Every action had a purpose. This chaos was planned. "All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance," he ordered. "We need time to restore our systems." The Draconian fleet began to pull back, but the damage was done. 15 ships were destroyed or too damaged to fight. The survivors were dealing with system failures and crew confusion. What should have been an easy victory had become a nightmare. On Earth, Admiral Chen watched the alien fleet retreat and felt a grim satisfaction. The first real battle was over, and humanity had won, but she knew this was just the beginning. The Draconians would learn from this encounter. They would adapt their tactics and come back stronger. "Send a message to all defense stations," she ordered. "Enemy fleet is regrouping. They'll be back, and they'll be ready for our tricks. Begin Phase 3 preparations. It's time to show them what humans do when we get serious." The Draconian fleet limped away from the battlefield, leaving behind wreckage and confusion. For the first time in 300 years of conquest, Admiral Vexver had lost a battle. But more importantly, he was beginning to realize that he didn't understand his enemy at all. The humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They used weapons that shouldn't work, tactics that made no sense, and strategies that turned strength into weakness. As his fleet regrouped near the outer edge of the solar system, Vexver began to wonder if conquering Earth would be more difficult than anyone had imagined. He was about to find out just how right he was. Admiral Vexver stared at the damage reports flowing across his screens. In 2 days of fighting, he had lost 37 ships, 37 vessels from the most powerful fleet in Draconian history, destroyed by humans who weren't supposed to be able to fight back. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer Mortax, "we have completed analysis of the human weapons. The asteroid bombardment came from modified mining equipment. The computer intrusion used our own communication protocols against us." "That possible?" Vexver demanded. "Our protocols are classified at the highest levels. Unknown, sir. But the humans knew exactly how our systems work. They targeted our weaknesses with perfect precision." The Admiral's clawed hands gripped his command chair. Something was very wrong here. The humans fought like they had studied Draconian tactics for years. They knew things they shouldn't know. They predicted movements they shouldn't be able to. "Predict. Send scouts ahead," he ordered. I want to know everything about their defensive positions, no more surprises. But Admiral Chun had no intention of fighting a defensive battle. While the Draconian fleet regrouped near Saturn, human ships were already moving. Not the 30 ships the aliens could see, but the hundreds they couldn't detect. The human stealth technology was based on a simple principle that other galactic species had never considered. Instead of trying to block sensors completely, they made their ships look like something else. A destroyer became a piece of space debris. A cruiser looked like a small asteroid. An entire battle group could hide by pretending to be a comet. Captain Maria Santos commanded the stealth destroyer Silent Arrow. Her ship had been following the Draconian supply convoy for 6 hours, moving slowly to match their course to enemy sensors. She looked like a harmless chunk of ice. "Target acquired," reported her weapons officer. "Draconian supply ship provision bearer, carrying fuel and ammunition. Range?" Santos asked. 2,000 kilometers in closing. "Fire when ready." The Silent Arrow launched a single torpedo, but this was not an ordinary torpedo. Human engineers had taken Draconian torpedo designs and improved them. The weapon was faster, smarter, and completely invisible to enemy sensors until the moment of impact. The torpedo struck the provision bearer amidships. The explosion tore the supply ship apart and scattered burning fuel across space. The escorts immediately began searching for the attacker, but the Silent Arrow had already changed course and disappeared into an asteroid field. This same scene played out across the solar system. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck at supply lines and isolated vessels, then vanished before the Draconians could respond. Every attack was different. Sometimes they used torpedoes. Sometimes they used the asteroids themselves as weapons. Once, a human ship actually rammed a Draconian destroyer, then escaped in a small pod while the enemy ship exploded on the Crimson Talon. Admiral Vexfer watched his fleet slowly bleed to death. "How many ships have we lost to these ghost attacks?" 23. "Sir, all supply vessels or escorts on patrol duty. We have not been able to track any of the attackers. This is impossible. Ships cannot simply disappear, but they could, and they did. The humans had turned the entire solar system into a hunting ground. Every asteroid field became a hiding place. Every piece of space debris might be a weapon. Every shadow could conceal an enemy ship. The psychological pressure was devastating. Draconian crews jumped at every sensor reading. They fired at asteroids, empty space, even their own shadows. Discipline began to break down as fear spread through the fleet. Then the humans escalated their campaign. Lieutenant Commander James Park sat in his modified cargo ship, Trojan Horse, and watched the Draconian heavy cruiser Stormbringer approach. His ship looked exactly like a damaged human vessel, complete with fake distress signals and simulated hull breaches. "Sir, the Draconians are responding to our distress call," reported his communications officer. "Perfect. Remember, we need to look completely helpless until the last moment." The Stormbringer approached cautiously. Its captain, Velter, was suspicious of the human distress signal, but his orders were to capture any human vessels for intelligence purposes. This damaged ship might contain valuable information. "Scanning the vessel now," reported his sensor operator. "I detect life signs, but their weapons appear to be offline. Hull breaches on multiple decks." "Bring us alongside," Velter ordered. "Prepare a boarding party." The two ships docked together. Draconian soldiers moved through the airlock, expecting to find frightened human survivors. Instead, they found an empty corridor filled with human music playing softly from hidden speakers. "Where is everyone?" asked Sergeant Kexron, leading the boarding party. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting red shadows through the ship. The Draconian soldiers found themselves in a maze of corridors that seemed to change when they weren't looking. Doors opened and closed by themselves. Strange sounds echoed from empty rooms. Sometimes they glimpsed human figures moving in the shadows, but when they investigated, they found nothing. "This is Kexron to the Stormbringer," the sergeant called over his radio. "We need immediate extraction. Something is very wrong here." But the Stormbringer couldn't respond. The moment the boarding party had entered the human ship, carefully hidden devices had activated. They blocked all communication and began transmitting a virus into the Draconian ship's computer systems. The virus was a masterpiece of human programming. It didn't destroy anything. Instead, it made small changes. Lights flickered at random intervals. Doors opened slightly slower than normal. The artificial gravity fluctuated just enough to make walking uncomfortable. Food dispensers occasionally produced meals that smelled terrible. Most importantly, the virus made the ship's sensors report things that weren't there. Phantom human ships appeared on screens, then disappeared. False alarms rang constantly. Crew members began to question everything their instruments told them. Captain Velter tried to maintain order, but his crew was slowly going insane. They saw enemies everywhere, trusted nothing, and jumped at every sound. When they finally managed to retrieve their boarding party, the soldiers were babbling about ghosts and impossible corridors. "Destroy that human ship immediately," Velter ordered. The Stormbringer fired all weapons at the Trojan horse. The human vessel exploded in a brilliant flash, but the damage was done. The virus was already deep inside the Draconian ship's systems, and it was spreading to every vessel the Stormbringer communicated with. Admiral Vexfer received the reports with growing horror. His fleet was being infected with some kind of digital plague that made his ships unreliable and his crews paranoid. Worse, he was starting to realize that every encounter with the humans had been planned in advance. "Sir," reported his communications officer with a shaking voice, "we're receiving a transmission from the human commander." Admiral Chun's face appeared on the main screen. She looked calm and confident, sitting in what appeared to be a simple military office. Behind her, Vexfer could see star charts and tactical displays. "Admiral Vexfer," she said politely, "I hope you're enjoying your visit to our solar system." "What do you want, human?" he snarled. "To give you some information. You see, we've been listening to your communications since you arrived. Your quantum encryption is quite good, but we cracked it 3 years ago when we found one of your scout ships that had suffered engine failure." Vexfer's blood went cold. If the humans could read their communications, they knew everything. Every order, every plan, every movement of his fleet. "That's how we always know where you're going to be," Chun continued. "It's also how we know that you're down to 140 ships, that your crews are demoralized, and that your supply situation is becoming critical." "Impossible," Vexfer whispered, but he knew it was true. "We also know that you've been requesting reinforcements from the hegemony. I'm afraid they won't be coming. You see, we've been sending false reports using your own communication systems. As far as your superiors know, the conquest of Earth is proceeding perfectly on schedule." The Admiral stared at the screen in shock. The humans had not only defeated his attacks, they had cut him off from all outside help. His fleet was alone, trapped in a solar system that had become a death trap. "I'm sending you this message as a courtesy," Chun said. "You have a choice to make. You can continue fighting and watch your fleet be destroyed piece by piece. Or you can withdraw and tell the galaxy what you learned here." "And what have we learned?" Vexfer asked quietly. Admiral Chun smiled, and for the first time Vexfer saw something truly frightening in her eyes. It was not anger or hatred. It was the calm confidence of someone who held all the cards in a deadly game. "You've learned that humanity doesn't fight wars," she said. "We solve problems." "And right now, Admiral, your fleet is our problem?" The transmission ended, leaving Vexfer staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked terrified. They had come to conquer a primitive world, but instead they had found something far more dangerous. They had found humans who were ready for war. Admiral Vexfer made his decision. The human admiral was right about one thing. His fleet was dying slowly in this cursed solar system. Better to attack with what strength remained than to be picked apart ship by ship. "All vessels prepare for final assault," he broadcast to his remaining fleet. "We advance on the human homeworld. Whatever tricks they have left, we will overwhelm them with pure firepower." 60 ships remained of his once mighty fleet, still enough to destroy a planet if they could reach it. The humans had been clever, but now they would face the full weight of Draconian military power. On Earth, Admiral Chun watched the enemy fleet begin its approach. This was the moment she had been preparing for since the war began. Everything that had happened before was just preparation for this final battle. "Signal all hidden units," she ordered. Operation Revelation begins. Now, what the Draconians saw on their sensors was exactly what they expected. The 30 human ships they had been fighting all along were arranged in a defensive formation around Earth. Behind them, the planet's orbital stations prepared for a desperate last stand. What they didn't see was the truth. The orbital stations were not stations at all. They were human dreadnoughts, each one the size of a Draconian heavy cruiser. For 5 years, human engineers had been building these ships in secret, using technology captured from previous alien encounters. But they had been disguised as simple defensive platforms. The moon hung in space behind Earth, looking peaceful and normal. But Luna was no longer just Earth's natural satellite. It had been hollowed out and converted into the largest weapon ever built by human hands. The surface looked unchanged, but underneath lay railguns that could fire projectiles at near light speed. As the Draconian fleet approached, Admiral Chun gave the order that would change galactic history forever: remove all stealth fields. Show them what Earth really looks like. Across the solar system, human ships suddenly became visible. They emerged from behind asteroids, from within gas clouds, from the shadows of planets. What the Draconians had thought was a fleet of 30 ships was actually over 300 vessels. On the Crimson Talon, sensor operator Crickstyle stared at his displays in horror. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. Hundreds of ships are appearing on sensors." Admiral Vexver felt his heart skip a beat. "That's impossible." "Where did they come from?" "Unknown, sir. They appeared to have been here all along, somehow hidden from our sensors." But that wasn't the worst surprise. The orbital platforms around Earth suddenly began to move. Massive engines ignited, revealing that the defensive stations were actually warships. Each one was larger and more heavily armed than anything in the Draconian fleet. Captain Sarah Martinez commanded the dreadnought Earth's Hammer, disguised as Orbital Platform 7 for the past 2 years. She had watched the Draconian fleet approach with growing anticipation. Now it was time to reveal what human shipbuilders could accomplish when they set their minds to it. "All weapons online," she reported to Admiral Chun. "Ready to engage." "Fire at will, Captain." "Show them what we've built." The Earth's Hammer opened fire with weapons that no other species had ever imagined. Instead of energy beams, it launched projectiles made of compressed matter that could punch through any known shield. Instead of missiles, it fired drones that could think for themselves and adapt to enemy defenses. The first Draconian ship to die was the destroyer Quickstrike. A human projectile hit amidships and simply erased a 50-meter section of the hull. The ship broke in half and exploded. The crew never knew what hit them. More human dreadnoughts revealed themselves and joined the attack. Each one used different weapons, different tactics, different approaches to destroying enemy ships. The Draconians found themselves facing not just superior numbers, but technologies they had never seen before. "Return fire!" Vexver ordered desperately. "All ships, engage the nearest enemy." The Draconian fleet responded with everything they had. Energy beams lanced across space, striking human ships. But the humans had been studying Draconian weapons for years. Their shields were specifically designed to stop the energy frequencies that the aliens used. Worse for the Draconians, the human ships fought like nothing they had ever encountered. Instead of formal battle lines, the humans swarmed around the alien fleet like angry insects. They coordinated their attacks perfectly, striking weak points and retreating before the Draconians could respond. Then the moon opened fire. The first shot came without warning. A railgun projectile traveling at 12% of light speed struck the Draconian battlecruiser Iron Will. The impact was so violent that it vaporized the entire ship instantly. The explosion was visible from Mars. "What was that?" Vexver screamed over the chaos of battle. "The shot came from their moon, sir. It's been weaponized. As if to prove the point, Luna fired again and again. Each shot destroyed a Draconian vessel completely. The aliens began to understand that they were not fighting a desperate last stand. They were trapped in a carefully planned massacre. Captain Rexton commanded the Draconian heavy cruiser Bloodstorm. He watched in horror as human ships swarmed around his vessel like predators attacking wounded prey. His shields were failing under the constant barrage of weapons that seemed to come from every direction. "Sir, we're surrounded," reported his tactical officer. "Break through their lines. We have to reach the planet." But there were no lines to break through. The humans didn't fight in formations. They fought as individuals, each ship captain making their own decisions while somehow coordinating perfectly with the others. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. A human destroyer flashed past the Bloodstorm's bridge. As it passed, it dropped a small device that attached to the hull. Rexton didn't have time to worry about it. He was too busy trying to survive the constant attacks. The device was a beacon. Within seconds, every human ship in the area knew exactly where the Bloodstorm was, exactly how fast it was moving, and exactly where its weak points were located. The information was shared instantly through quantum communication, links that the Draconians couldn't detect or jam. 3 human cruisers converged on the Bloodstorm from different directions. Their attacks were perfectly timed. The first ship disabled the engines. The second destroyed the weapon systems. The third punched a hole through the bridge, killing Captain Rexton and his entire command crew across the battlefield. The same coordinated attacks were destroying the Draconian fleet piece by piece. The aliens were not just outnumbered and outgunned. They were fighting an enemy that could share information instantly, coordinate attacks perfectly, and adapt to changing conditions faster than any other species in the galaxy. Admiral Vexver watched his fleet die around him. In 30 minutes of fighting, he had lost 40 ships. Only 20 vessels remained, and most of those were heavily damaged. The humans hadn't just defeated him. They had destroyed him completely. "Sir," called his communications officer with a voice full of despair, "the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies." Admiral Chien's face appeared on the main screen again. Behind her, tactical displays showed the complete destruction of the Draconian fleet. She looked calm and professional, as if she had just completed a routine training exercise. "Admiral Vexver," she said, "I believe you're beginning to understand your situation. What do you want?" he asked quietly. "Nothing from you. But I want you to deliver a message to the galaxy. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that Earth is not helpless. Tell them that humanity is ready to take its place among the stars." Vexver looked around his ruined bridge. Emergency lights flickered. Smoke filled the air. Most of his crew was dead or wounded. His mighty fleet had been reduced to a handful of broken ships. "Why are you letting me live?" he asked. "Because someone needs to tell the story," Chun replied. "Someone needs to explain to the Draconian hegemony why their 4th Expeditionary Fleet never returned. Someone needs to warn them that the next time they come to this system, they better bring everything they have." She paused, and her expression became deadly serious. "And even then it won't be enough," the transmission ended. Admiral Vexver stared at the blank screen and realized that his military career was over. He had been defeated not by superior force but by superior thinking. The humans had outmaneuvered him at every turn, anticipated his every move, and prepared for possibilities he had never imagined dot around Earth. The human fleet regrouped. 300 ships of war, each one a masterpiece of human engineering and creativity. They had been hidden for years, waiting for this moment. Now they hung in space like metal stars, proof that humanity was no longer defenseless. The trap had been sprung. The prey had been caught. And for the first time in galactic history, a Draconian fleet had been completely and utterly destroyed. But Admiral Chung knew this was just the beginning. Word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would hear the story and draw their own conclusions. Some would fear humanity. Others would respect them. A few might even want to become allies. The age of human isolation was over. The galaxy was about to meet its newest players, and they were nothing like anyone expected The bridge of the Crimson Talon was a tomb. Most of Admiral Vexver's crew lay dead at their stations, killed when human weapons had punched through the ship's armor. Emergency power cast everything in red light. The smell of burned electronics and spilled blood filled the air. Vexver sat alone in his command chair, staring at the tactical display. Of his 200 ships, only his flagship remained operational. Around him floated the wreckage of the most powerful fleet the Draconian hegemony had ever assembled. Destroyed not by superior numbers but by an enemy that fought like nothing he had ever imagined. A communication signal appeared on his damaged console. Admiral Chen's face filled the screen one final time. She looked exactly the same as when this nightmare had begun. Calm, professional, and completely in control. "Admiral," she said quietly, "it's time for you to go home." "Home?" Vexver laughed bitterly. "What home? When the hegemony learns of this defeat, I will be executed for incompetence. My family will be stripped of honor. My name will be erased from all records." "That's not my concern," Chun replied. "But I will tell you something that might help you understand what happened here. Do you know how long humanity has been preparing for this day?" Vexver shook his head slowly. 150 years, she said. "That's when we first detected alien ships passing through our system. We realized we were not alone in the galaxy, and we knew that someday someone would come to conquer us. So we prepared." Chun's image shifted, showing views of Earth's hidden military installations. "We studied every alien ship that came near our system. We recovered wreckage from vessels that suffered accidents. We learned your languages, your technologies, your military tactics. Most importantly, we learned how you think." The display showed massive construction projects hidden throughout the solar system. "While you spent a century conquering primitive worlds, we spent that time building weapons designed specifically to fight galactic powers. Every system in this solar system became part of our defense. Every asteroid, every moon, every piece of space debris." Vexver stared at the images. The scope of human preparation was staggering. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, and they had done it without anyone noticing. "But why tell me this?" he asked. "Why let me live when you could simply destroy my ship?" "Because you're going to carry a message," Chun said. "Not just to the Draconian hegemony, but to every species in the galaxy. You're going to tell them what happened here. You're going to explain why the Fourth Expeditionary Fleet never returned." She leaned forward, and her voice became deadly serious. "More importantly, you're going to tell them what will happen to anyone else who comes here with hostile intentions." The screen changed to show the human fleet in all its glory. 300 warships hung in space around Earth, each one bristling with weapons that no other species had ever seen. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time, representing the full potential of human engineering and creativity. "This is not the total strength of human military forces," Chun continued. "This is just what we keep in our home system. We have been building ships and bases throughout human space for decades. We have weapons you cannot imagine, tactics you cannot predict, and the will to use them both." Vexver felt a chill run down his spine. "You're threatening the entire galaxy." "No," Chun said firmly. "We're offering the galaxy a choice. Leave us alone, and we'll leave you alone. Trade with us fairly, and we'll trade fairly with you. Respect our space, and we'll respect yours. But if you come here as conquerors—" She gestured toward the wreckage floating around Earth. "Well, you've seen what happens to conquerors." The Admiral looked at his tactical display one more time. The debris field told the whole story. The most powerful military force in Draconian history had been completely destroyed by humans who weren't supposed to be able to fight back. "How?" he asked quietly. "How did you defeat us so completely?" Chun smiled, and for the first time it was not a cold smile. "You made the same mistake that every galactic power makes, Admiral. You assumed that because we were young, we were weak. You assumed that because we were isolated, we were ignorant. You assumed that because we were different, we were inferior." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You forgot that evolution doesn't create weak species. Earth is a harsh world, Admiral. For millions of years, only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable creatures survived. Humanity didn't reach the top of our food chain by being peaceful. We got there by being better predators than anything else on our planet. The screen showed images of Earth's history. Wars, innovations, explorations, and discoveries. Humanity's long climb from primitive tribes to spacefaring civilization. Every challenge made us stronger. Every disaster taught us new lessons. Every enemy forced us to become more creative. You didn't attack a peaceful farming world, Admiral. You attacked a planet full of survivors who have been fighting for survival since before your species even existed. Vexver realized the horrible truth. The Draconian hegemony had not encountered a primitive species. They had stumbled into the territory of apex predators who had been waiting patiently for someone to make exactly this mistake. Your ships. Engines are functional, Chun said, returning to practical matters. Your navigation systems have been repaired. You have enough fuel to reach the nearest Draconian outpost. We've even loaded your computers with detailed recordings of this battle, so your superiors can see exactly what happened. And then, Vexver asked, then you tell them the truth. Tell them that Earth is protected. Tell them that humanity is ready to defend itself. Tell them that the next fleet they send here had better come in peace, because if they come for war, none of them will return home. Admiral Chun's image began to fade. You have 1 hour to leave our solar system, Admiral. After that, we'll consider your presence an act of aggression. The transmission ended, leaving Vexver alone with his thoughts. Around his ship, human vessels maintained a respectful distance. They could destroy him easily, but they were letting him go. Not out of mercy, but as a deliberate choice. They wanted him to deliver their message. He activated the ship's engines and began the long journey toward the edge of the solar system. As he traveled, he passed the wreckage of his fleet. 200 ships reduced to floating debris. Thousands of Draconian soldiers dead, all because they had underestimated a species they knew nothing about. Behind him, the human fleet began to disperse. Some ships disappeared back into their hiding places. Others took up patrol positions throughout the system. The message was clear. Earth was guarded, and the guards were always watching. As the Crimson Talon reached the edge of human space, automated beacons activated throughout the solar system. They began broadcasting on all galactic frequencies in every known language. The message was simple but chilling. Warning. You are entering the Sol System sovereign territory of the Human Federation. The system is defended. Any vessel entering with hostile intent will be destroyed without further warning. The Draconian 4th Expeditionary Fleet ignored this warning. None of their ships returned. Choose your actions carefully. The broadcast repeated continuously, ensuring that anyone approaching Earth would know exactly what they were facing. The age of human isolation was over. The galaxy now knew that Earth was protected by creatures who fought like demons and thought like angels. 3 months later, Vexver arrived at the Draconian military headquarters on Draktor Prime. He was arrested immediately and brought before the High Command. They had expected a report of victory. Instead, they received recordings of the most devastating military defeat in Draconian history. This is impossible, declared Supreme Admiral Corvex after reviewing the battle recordings. No primitive species could defeat our fleet. They are not primitive, Vexver said quietly. We never bothered to learn anything about them. We assumed they were weak because they were young. We were wrong about everything. The High Command watched the recordings again and again, trying to understand how their most powerful fleet had been destroyed so completely. The humans had used tactics that violated every rule of galactic warfare. They had weapons that shouldn't exist. They had coordination that seemed impossible. Most disturbing of all, they had shown mercy to their defeated enemy. In galactic history, that was almost unknown. Species that could completely destroy their enemies usually did so. The fact that the humans had spared Vexver suggested a level of confidence that was terrifying. What are your recommendations? Asked Supreme Admiral Corvex. Vexver thought carefully before answering. Leave them alone. The humans are not interested in conquest. They want to be left in peace. Give them that peace and they will not threaten. Usos, but if we attack them again, he gestured toward the recordings of destroyed Draconian ships. Send 1,000 fleets and the result will be the same. The humans are not prey, Supreme Admiral, they are predators. And they have made their territory very clear. The Draconian High Command spent days debating their response. In the end, they chose wisdom over pride. Official orders went out to all Draconian forces. Human space was to be avoided. No Draconian ship was to enter the Sol system without explicit permission from the highest levels of government.